Good evening. Welcome inside the Hera Press Box. On today's episode, got a few Alyssa quotes to go over and a couple of determinations of whether or not a freakout was correct or not. It looks like you're going to be 1 for 2 on those freakouts this weekend,
Yeah, that's all right.
and those will be the two topics that we cover tonight. We'll see if we get anything else, but there is quite a bit with those two things
Yeah.
to go through, which we'll start with now. First one. I guess, do you have an opinion of which one you want to go through with first?
Let's go through Caroline first.
Okay, so first Alyssa quote that we have here is, I quote, "It's over, and oh my goodness, Caro may never win a major," end quote.
It was a very bad time for her in the match. She could not hold serve. I was getting extremely nervous. This is what happens when I get nervous. I err extremely negative. So
This is what happens when Wozniacki plays tennis, I think you meant to say. So this was never a wow,
it was never
is
like
this not Caroline Wozniacki that we're watching?
Right. It was never, I didn't believe that she couldn't win. There was never any disbelief. There was one time during this tournament that I thought that she was going to be out, and that was when she was down 5-1 in the third to Fett. I thought it was over then. I legitimately thought it was over then, but I didn't believe for a second that she was done. It was just looking very difficult at that time to get it done for her because no one really decided to hold serve in that third set.
Other quote.
Oh gosh.
This comes via Twitter.
Okay.
There was a tweet from the Australian Open account that I don't know if it went into an article, but the headline of the tweet was something along the lines of that Wozniacki's strategy should be to put a ton of balls in play and let Halep self-destruct.
Yeah.
Alyssa's quote of the tweet was, "This has to be a joke, right?" Question marks. Yeah,
so
go ahead.
that was, if you look at the Australian Open's page, it was very pro Simona. So then you kind of read through all the tweets and then you get to that one and it just sounds like it's completely derogatory. That's how she plays, and I got that and I get that, but for that to be a headline coming from them looking through their whole tweets, I just wasn't a fan of it.
As in because you thought they made it sound like there was no other way for Caroline to beat her?
Right. Yes, and that's how she plays, and I get that, and that's her game. But to assume that Caroline assumed that Halep was going to start making mistakes, I think was the wrong way to look at it. It wasn't, I don't know how to say this. It wasn't a great tweet from them. I was going to say professional tweet, but I think that's the wrong word.
Uh-huh. You want to know what unforced errors were?
What were they?
47, Halep to 28 Wozniacki.
Wow.
What are you looking up?
I'm looking up the tweet and I'm looking at the comments, and one of the comments just says inappropriate comments from an official site. So I clearly wasn't the only one that thought that it was inappropriate.
And I don't know if tonight I'm going to decide which side of that argument or whatever it may be I'd be on, but to an extent, and you've said that that's the way Wozniacki plays,
right?
To an extent, that's exactly
What they said.
What Caroline needed to do and what she did do, and what she did the whole tournament. There, I mean, just returning, putting the ball back over on the other side of the net and making the player hit it one more time. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't see it as being out of line. I guess I will jump on one side of the argument, but
Okay. I
But
just took it as
you
out of
saying
the
that it
run.
being in the line of other tweets from that account didn't
Right.
make it look any better.
Right.
And yeah, I could see where you're coming from there.
Or at least it seemed really pro Halep,
Uh-huh.
which is fine, but when it's coming from an official site, I feel like it really shouldn't be that way. And I'm sure it was the same in the men's side, I gotta believe.
So post match, not necessarily the trophy presentation, but now looking at Simona Halep,
Mhm.
did you feel like you had a read from her after the loss? How did she take it? What's the future for her? How devastating of a blow is this to a now former number one?
Yeah. So I definitely don't think it is as devastating as it would have been if Caroline would have lost.
Mhm.
I think if she would have lost, her chances just got less and less. For Halep, the way she handled it, I think tennis is one of those cruel sports where they make the runner up sit through the ceremony of the trophy presentation, and then they have to make a speech, and then they have to watch the winner make a speech, and just I think that's just cruel to do to the runner up. So clearly didn't take it, at least from the looks of it, too well, which is understandable because she hasn't won and she's been there. I think this was her third or fourth time in a final,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken.
And then them leaving her up on stage, that I know we've talked about this. This has been months ago that we talked about sort of the development of tennis and that always being this professional and sort of higher class, upper class
Right.
sport where
Yeah.
you're always needing to be showing that respect. So
Right.
now as athletes have evolved
Yeah.
from those standards and has become more of a not so would you want to go play tennis today, back in the day, which it was.
Right.
That's why she's still on the stage, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. And in terms of her winning a Grand Slam, I got to imagine she's going to win one, especially with the attitude that she had in the match against Caroline. That was a Halep that I've never seen before. Someone who didn't necessarily self-destruct, and I mean self-destruct mentally and not game-wise, physically, because she was hurting physically. And that's clearly due to the amount of time she had spent on the court. I think we talked about how the heat, I thought, was going to favor Caroline because she really wasn't out on the court as long as Halep was. Halep had just gone through that 3-set match that went 9-7 in the third.
3 extra hours, I think, at least 2.5.
Yeah. I thought it was in the range of 2 to 3. So I got to imagine when she's healthy, she's given a run to the final, and she's going to get one, at least one.
And before we jump on the other side of the net with that same question, this match and tonight, thinking about what we could talk about as far as spinning off from this championship match, was this question: what players are you waking up at 2:30 to watch for that match?
Given this, yeah, go ahead.
So I'm going Wozniacki, obviously.
Yeah. Yep.
And then thinking about this, and we talked about our favorite players who we kept up with, and we talk about that every tournament because those are the players we're usually picking to go far enough to talk about them during that tournament. So Wozniacki's there, but then I was thinking about Dominika, who I'm a fan of, but thinking about that question, for some reason, I don't see myself waking up at 2:30 to watch. Maria Sakkari, I'm up at 2:30 to watch.
Right.
And those Eugenie, I'm probably up at 2:30 to watch. And I would say those are the three.
Okay.
And I was thinking Karina Wittoff. She's close, I think, but not there. And then as I was thinking about her, I was thinking, okay, well, what about if we have like an unseeded player who's like an 18-year-old, maybe like a CC Bellis, who's sort of out of nowhere, and she's playing against somebody who is well known. And then that also made me think about, okay, well, if she's playing like a Serena Williams, am I going to wake up at 2:30 to watch Serena probably go straight sets against whoever unseeded, whatever unseeded player she's playing, or do I wake up to watch her play against an Ostapenko who's ranked, who I've, as far as what we talk about on here, I consider overrated, to wake up to watch an unseeded player play her and maybe get her breakthrough championship match. So all those things kind of came in my mind. I don't know if you had any thoughts to that or could speak to it.
It would depend on if we're talking this is the final in a Grand Slam. If we're talking it's the final in the Grand Slam.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I would say,
because otherwise it's just Wozniacki for me. And Sakkari. If Sakkari is on TV, then those are the two.
I would definitely say, given my sudden likeness for her, Wozniacki is definitely on the list. I would have to say Sharapova as well. And then I wanted to do 3. My third was going to be Serena. But kind of going to your point of, do I really want to watch Serena win in straight sets and crush the other person at 2:30 in the morning, given I'll be able to get a little bit more sleep afterwards, because hopefully it's only taking an hour and a half to 2 hours for her to win in 2 sets. So that plays into it. But I think I've only got 2, so Wozniacki and Sharapova. And depending on, I guess I take that back a little bit. I would watch and get up again for a Bethany Maddox-Sands match in the final. She played Serena last Australian Open, so I would definitely get up for that. So anything with Bethany in the final, I would do.
So there's your 3.
So there's my 3, yeah.
So there's our volley back to the other side of the net, and now revisiting the question we talked about Halep with, looking at Wozniacki, 27 years old. She just completed her first championship round. As far as a Grand Slam title goes, she's now 1 for 3. As I said, 27 years old. Thinking about her ceiling, thinking about what's next, thinking about if there will be a lull, or whether or not this is her. Okay, she's through the gate, and it's going to be tough to stop her with this momentum now. Do you have any initial thoughts on what happens?
My initial thought is for her to be content. I don't see her being content with one Grand Slam championship. So I think this is.
I'd hope not.
Yeah, exactly. That's the hope. So I think she's gonna.
Do you? Okay.
Okay.
We'll stop this question now because you bring that up, and that's something that we can kind of just rattle on for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And you say that, what you said there, and you hear that a lot. You hear that a lot from analysts. You hear that a lot from players, and they're admitting for one reason or another that they're not content with that one championship. They're not content with that one MVP. They're not content with being in the top 10 scorer of all time. Is there ever a time to be content? Do you think there has
for an athlete?
What?
For an athlete, are you talking?
For an athlete. So we'll think about Caroline now. In what case? So this is just something that I would kind of like to think through, and I'm glad you brought this up, because we could think through this as far as thinking about Caroline being. Would she ever be content with this one? And then what happens after that? Let's say she is content. Does she continue to play? Do athletes continue to play and sort of, I don't know, play for second basically, or would it be retirement? And then would you be shocked with a player like Wozniacki if she retired? Because then that would show that she's content with where she's at. And speaking to that point, we've heard a lot about her personal life in this tournament, and I don't like to get into stuff like that on this podcast, but it seems like she is very content with things off the court, which is in situations where you might see an athlete actually hang him up because of that.
Right. And that's what more or less I was asking with the athlete question. It's kind of a stupid question of, are you talking about athletes? But it was more or less, are you talking about on the court? Are you talking about off the court? And I think that her being content with her life off the court is helping her on the court.
You were talking content on the court, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that for any athlete, I don't think there's ever a point, at least during their career, that they should be content. And if they are content to the point of being content of, you know what, if I don't win anymore, I'm okay with that. If I go into each and every match and I don't win, that's okay. Then why are you still playing type of deal? Are you playing just because you love the sport that much and you have the ability to do what you love and still make some sort of money from it? Well, yes, but at some point that's got to run out, you would think, of what's the point of playing if I can't win a match or if I can't win a game? So
now circling back around, if you let me talk for just one more minute, this is an interesting conversation, especially when we consider Sloane Stephens' comments after her first round loss. Not sure if you saw her interview, but there was a lot of questions raised because when she was questioned about her play or what went wrong, or hey Sloane, you've continued this slide after your great showing early in the season last year. What's going on? And her answer was kind of like, well, I don't really look a lot into it. I'm just out here. I had fun and we're trying to get better, and we'll come out here next tournament and play. And those type of comments where you could make a case that she was with content with getting beat and getting to go home early.
I don't believe that for a second.
That she interviewed like that?
I believe that she interviewed like that, but that's the thing that you say, right? What are you supposed to go out there and say of, yeah, I'm extremely mad? Like,
you haven't seen the interview?
No.
Okay, well, she's smiling and laughing during the whole thing.
Oh. Well, I don't believe her. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
Just
back on your.
So as far as being content for Caroline on the court, I don't see that. I think if anything, this is a motivation for her it's finally and she may have self-belief beforehand, but it's a whole different game when you actually win. It's a whole different mental battle when you win. So I think that's going to push her forward, and it's going to be a thing of she can say, I actually won. I can do this. Because so many people were essentially against her and saying that she could never do it. I mean, you sent me that article about how she could be the greatest player to never win a major.
Well, that was
Well, yeah.
That was an opinion article.
Right. But that's what this all is opinion. So
except for that article. So
yeah.
That's a Wozniacki. That's a player that's been hyped up for her entire life. Was number one in the world at 20 years old. Jumped onto the scene at such a young age and has been this super prospect in the tennis world for over a decade now. A player like that number 2 on my list, Maria Sakkari, if she gets to this stage and wins a title, does a player like that have a better chance at being content? Would you feel more comfortable saying that because it was their rise and now, okay, well, sustained power, not really looking so great for a player of this caliber?
I don't know necessarily. It would depend on where Sakkari is at the time. If she's in the top 10, top 15, I don't know where she's at right now, which I don't believe she's in. I know she's not in the top 10.
She's 54.
Right. So I think that there's a difference of when you're ranked than being, where she's at right now. If she were to go out and win the French Open, maybe there's a point of, this could be it. This could be how she's as content as she's going to be, and she's fine with that. Do I see that for her particularly? No, I don't. Because I think she's got a long career ahead of her. So I don't see her necessarily retiring after the French Open if she were to win it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll move on and kind of back to that question that we had initially started on, and that you said that you don't see Caroline being content. What is her future? Couple of specific questions, and I'll go 1st on this first one here. I had written down here biggest threat. Who's Caroline's biggest threat? What is her biggest threat? And to me, and you can kind of use my words against me, who is the biggest threat? Well, it's Caroline Wozniacki. I think is her biggest threat, and that comes from the way she plays. We see her defensive mindset, that she's going to make the other person beat her, and I don't think that's going to change. I hope it doesn't change, especially as she now gets older, into her mid-30s. Maybe she does lose a step, but her being accurate enough and keeping those unforced errors down, that's going to keep her in matches, going to keep her in tournaments. And so it was me saying that she's her own biggest threat. She's going to run into matches where she's not accurate and she's hitting out down the lines as opposed to online in the corner like she was doing against Halep. So she will get knocked out, and I see her career from now on going just the way it has over the last 5-6 years.
Yeah, with maybe a couple more Grand Slam titles in there.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I think mentally she's in the best place possible, which is only going to help her. Tennis is by far the most mentally taxing sport there is, if I could talk tonight. So I think she's in a great place there. I would say anybody like a Serena Williams, and even with Halep, where they just have so much speed on their shots, given she can run down pretty much anything. But I think powerful hitters are a big threat for her.
Yeah, and that just comes from, working her further back from the back line, from the baseline than what she wants to play. That's where that comes into factor. Okay, well, we'll move on to the other topic. So I'm going ahead and say you're 0 for 1 on the Wozniacki freakout. You were 1 for 1 and then 1 for 2 overall for the weekend. And that is in regards to the Boston Breakers, who have since, as of 8 or 9 hours ago, officially disbanded. They will not be a team or a franchise any longer in the National Women's Soccer League. There will be a dispersal draft that will be on Tuesday at 3 p.m. for those players on the Breakers to be split into other teams in the league. That draft order's going to be at random. It'll be set on Monday or Tuesday, maybe finally set on Tuesday morning. It'll be a weighted selection.
Yeah.
So we'll wait on that order to come out. A few really good players on the Breakers. We'll see what teams get those. But looking back now on this entire situation as it developed, and comments that were made from league officials, including Amanda Duffy, which I know you are a huge component of. I'll let you speak to that if you would like to. But yeah, that's looking back now. I know you were the one who first sent me that storyline or the happenings, and I didn't freak out to begin with. There was still time, and there was still time a couple of different times. There were two different groups who were near the finish line as far as buying the Breakers and keeping them in store for another year and continuing on business as usual, as Amanda Duffy said a month ago a few weeks ago at the draft. Now business as usual, but those deals fell through. And now we're left with 9 teams in NWSL, continue on with the 24-game schedule, 9 teams total though. Your thoughts?
So let's just first start off with Amanda Duffy, I can get that out of the way. So they knew the day before the draft, I do believe is the timeline of it, that there was a very high possibility that the Boston Breakers were not going to exist this year. They knew that. So for first off, for them to be able to draft anybody is unprofessional as you can get, in my mind. And then for Amanda Duffy to come out there and say it's business as usual when you know full well that the team is not going to be around. Again, unprofessional. It's, from what I was reading, from what I heard, the players were pretty much kept in the dark about it. Didn't really find out about it till last minute type of stuff. So now you've got, the way I do believe the draft is working is anybody who is under contract and who has been drafted will not count against the 20 max, the maximum amount of players, which is 20. But anybody who's not under contract is going to count against that. So this just whole situation, the way that it was handled, is completely unprofessional. Duffy's comments were out of line. You could have said something along the lines of, we're working on it, or something to that effect, and not just say business as usual, because clearly it's not business as usual if you have a team that's not going to exist this season.
Have we seen any tweets from her regarding the NWSL or the Boston Breakers?
Not that I've seen. Or
because there was a time frame. I mean, this is a month's time frame where she sent no tweets regarding the NWSL, and she's acting at commission of the league. So just another interesting note for you to continue your fandom of Amanda Duffy. But go ahead with your talk.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all that I have to say about Amanda Duffy. The league needs a commissioner. So, and she better not be it.
You had made a comment, and I just want to see what your thoughts are now. You had, you might have texted this, and I think you said you hope this isn't a domino effect, or you're afraid that it will be. Where are you at in that thinking now?
So the reason why they're ceasing to exist is that they hadn't made enough money to pay league fees. I have no idea what league fees are as far as set amounts in those. So I can't really speak to that, but it's not like these players are living off their salaries for a full year. So these teams aren't necessarily making these oodles and oodles amounts of money. So I hope that if there was ever a situation like this again, that the league would step up, that U.S. Soccer would step up. U.S. Soccer has taken so much responsibility for the NWSL, and they did absolutely nothing. They have $150 million surplus. They couldn't have just given some money to the Breakers for at least this year and just say, hey, here's a plan, here's some money, go for it. So I hope, so I'm worried that teams, let's just say, you know, outside of Portland, pretty much, other teams that aren't making significant amounts of money will fail to operate because they won't be able to pay league fees. And is that the reason why everyone else kind of fell apart, or every other league fell apart? Is it league fees, or is it based off of fan support? Is, you know, fan base, I should say.
What did my comment to that have any effect on what you're thinking, as far as maybe this is in the future better for teams like this? And I guess I said this in thinking that there was going to be a group that came in and was able to purchase the team and somewhat have them alive in some capacity. But my comment was, maybe this gets the team into the hands of the right group, right people that actually want to take care of them.
Yeah, and that, I didn't clearly think of that. Otherwise, I probably maybe wouldn't have freaked out so much about it. But I think that's the problem with getting owners to put teams in the right spaces. I know we talked about this when we talked about the San Antonio Stars moving to Las Vegas, in that teams are going where their owners want them to go, not necessarily where they're best fit to go. So I hope that this does get people who are actually dedicated to building a team. And that's why I was so excited about Utah, is because they at least made it sound, and I believe them, that they want to build the best women's team to exist. So I hope that that is the case in the next year or so to come, because it's looking like we're going to expand, or that's the hope at least, to expand after this season, which to expand by 3 teams is going to be asking a lot, or just expanding by 1 team, I guess, to get it back to 10.
Yeah, this whole debacle has to be some sort of a wake-up call for the league, for itself, and for future franchises. I mean, the league sees this happening, and after a very dedicated fan base for the Breakers, a team that had been through multiple professional women's soccer leagues, to see that team go away. Now you look, okay, where are we going to move next? Let's say it's Cincinnati. All right, here's what we have to do in Cincinnati to build a fan base similar to what Boston had. We have to promote this team. We have to get this city ready to fully adopt this team, win or lose, for at least a couple of years, and get them off the ground, so that way we can move on and continue to expand and not have to look back, because we know they're set where they are.
Right, and that's essentially why I'm nervous about a domino effect, because it's one thing, because I know Cincinnati held a U.S. soccer game. It's one thing to show up for a national team game, but it's one thing to show up for a club game. And I'm not saying that Cincinnati wouldn't, but it's just that's what makes me nervous, because we kind of see it with national team games. We see really high attendance for their games, but when it comes to club, not a lot of people, a fraction of those people show up.
So, breaking news for me. This is from Flow Softball, and it was just because I hopped onto Twitter real quick and saw Jennifer Gordon's tweet from, I don't know how long ago it was, but this Flow Softball article is from an hour ago. And I won't be able to find Gordon's tweet now, but the Scrapyard Dogs announced that they are leaving NPF. So within the article, it says that the Dogs will continue to compete at the highest level as an independent team, playing a full summer schedule that includes major venues and globally televised events in packed stadiums against the top-ranked teams in the world. The team goes on to say that going forward, not only will Scrapyard Dog players' contracts include significant salary increases, but players will also have a much stronger voice and vote in all strategic owner management decisions. That was unavailable under the NPF structure, according to this article. So I assume we'll expand on that in later episodes, especially now as NPF adds a team from Australia. That would have been their 6th team, but now the Scrapyard Dogs, who have been the dominant franchise for the last few years, are going to compete as an independent team. So then who knows where that goes as an independent team? You can see another league coming up, sort of letting the Scrapyard Dogs lead the way for that.
Interesting.
Very interesting time there. Back to the NWSL, though. I want to end this episode with a bit of a ranking on a scale-wise. Well, first, are there any positives coming from this? Is the only positive that you see maybe that somebody that does care about these teams does get their hands on franchise? Anything else?
That's definitely one. I hope this pushes the league to get a commissioner. And I hope this pushes the fans to support their teams even more, to realize that this is very much of a possibility. The league has been, I don't want to say lucky, but this is the best league that the U.S. has created so far. So to kind of have this one team cease to exist anymore, especially with it being Boston, is extremely heartbreaking. So I hope the fans rally around their teams and more people rally around their teams.
Mm-hmm. And looking at the dispersal draft, I see one positive, one negative. One negative we've already talked about, and you hear it's been made note of a handful of times everywhere. The negative is that the goalie situation in the league is already very small, and there's not a whole lot of avenues to have two starting caliber goalies, which teams already have. Now we have Abby Smith, who will be in the draft. It'll be interesting to see where she goes and how her career plays out, and if she displaces somebody else, which then would have a domino effect of itself. So that's something we'll keep an eye on Tuesday. And the positive, I would say, from this is that we are going to get to see better teams because of this draft. Like I mentioned, there are a few really, really good players from the Breakers. I'm excited to see where Lavelle does go, or where Mitch Purse goes, or where a Dowie or Frisbee and Julie King, where they go, where they wind up, and White, where she ends up. So, looking at it from that perspective and not caring about anything else, you can have some positive thoughts. So something to keep an eye on there. And then getting back to what I was going to finish with on a scale from 1 to 10, and I don't know if this was in that picture I sent to you, but 1 being the league will fold by the beginning of the season, and a 10 being that the next 10 years of NWSL soccer is guaranteed. Where does the league currently sit, in your opinion?
I, for some reason, still have a positive outlook on it, even though I said I'm very nervous about a domino effect. I'm nervous about it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to go.
But before you say a number, the way that's set up, now that I'm looking at that scale, the way that it's set up from folding it this year, which is basically a 0 until 10 years guaranteed, 10 being the 10.
Yeah.
So how many years right now, this is the scale, how many years right now is the league guaranteed for? That's what the scale would be. That's what number you're thinking. Is that the same number?
Well, no, it's not the same number, because I don't like that number. If we're going years, what was your first number? My first number was 7, but if we're going years, I'm saying 5.
Okay, I would agree with 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of a little bit of a cop out, though, with going with 5, because it's right in the middle. So it's kind of like yes, no, maybe type of answer. And you circle maybe. But I think it's guaranteed at least 5 years.
5 years, because the expansion, expanding, you could do it way too quick. You could hurt yourself more. So if the league gets 3 more teams next year, that's 12.
That's a big jump.
Right, and then pushing that forward, even 4 years from then, you're talking. Did the MLS expand pretty quickly?
I don't know too much about their expansion. I know that they had a hard time in 2002, I do believe it was. And then they continue to expand, and they still are expanding. I think they're at 23 teams.
Okay, they're 23.
Yeah, and I know that one of their teams is in jeopardy, or at least that's what I've been hearing. So I would have to look back on the history of around that, early 2000s. Is it because they were just expanding too quickly, or if it was something where soccer just wasn't the sport in the U.S. yet?
So I think 5 years from now, we're at a spot where the league has either just adopted its 16th team, or they're preparing to adopt their 16th team. I think that's the number we're looking at in 5 years. At this rate, if they do get 3 more in for next year. So just to stick up for that 5 year prediction, I think that sort of becomes a turning point for the league. Okay, are we going to be this league that is now fighting to be the premier league in the world,
Yeah,
or
right.
are we just not cut out for it?
Which in my mind, they were fighting for the Premier League in the world till they lost the Breakers.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
No, but I think expanding to 3 teams after this season would be very dangerous, unless it's an MLS backed team.
And also maybe depending on what kind of support the new president gives.
Yeah, that's for a different day. But yes, I agree.
Okay, yeah, we'll leave that for a different day. But for tonight's episode, unless you wanted to go over any W League stuff.
All I can say is that if Melbourne City wins this weekend, they are in. The top 3 spots, or 3 of the 4 spots, I should say, are already taken up. So if Melbourne City wins, they are in. Then it gets a little bit tricky if they draw or they lose. But it's either them or Canberra United taking up that 4th spot.
Okay, well, there you go. There's your W League update. There's your Wozniacki talk and also some Boston Breaker talk. We say so long to the Breakers, and we also say so long from the Hera Press Box. Thanks for stopping by.